Coucou! I'm Hex Tilda, and this is Hexed History. Today, we're going to talk about a day that has been celebrated in France for over a century, May Day. May Day is a day dedicated to celebrating laborers and the working class, and it has a long history in France. The 1st of May, or the Fête du Travail, Labor Day, was declared a public holiday in France in 1948 during the creation of the Fifth Republic, but its origins date back much further than that. May Day has its roots in the struggle for workers' rights during the French Revolution. In 1793, a law was passed that required all workers to work 10 hours a day. This led to protests and strikes, which culminated in the workers' takeover of the city of Lyon in 1794. The takeover was successful, and workers were able to negotiate better working conditions and wages. In 1886, a group of workers in the United States launched a campaign for the 8-hour workday. On May 1st of that year, they called for a nationwide strike. In Chicago, the police intervened in a protest, leading to a violent confrontation known as the Haymarket Affair. Several workers were killed and others were arrested and sentenced to death. May Day also has ties to the International Workers' Day, typically called Labor Day, which is celebrated on May 1st around the world. Please note, the USA celebrates Labor Day on a different day than the rest of the world, and that is by design. In the United States, the labor movement chose to commemorate Labor Day in September to distance itself from the socialist associations with May Day, which was seen as a potentially dangerous and radical holiday. This has had the secondary effect of making it difficult to have a cohesive international effort. Here in France, the socialist revolutionary Auguste Blanc was one of the first to advocate for May Day as a day of protest for workers' rights. He called for a universal strike on May 1st, 1890, which led to massive demonstrations across the country. Boulevard Auguste Blanc is on a popular route for protests, as it runs between Place d'Italie and the Lion de Belfort at Denfert Rochereau, which I feel like he would particularly appreciate. The Lion de Belfort is the second most famous statue by Bartholdi. The most famous is installed in New Jersey. In the 1930s, the May Day demonstrations became a focal point for the leftist coalition known as the Front Populaire, which included socialists, communists, and anarchists. The Front Populaire led to significant reforms, including the establishment of the 40-hour work week and paid vacation time. We're now at a 35-hour work week and 6 weeks of paid vacation time in France. In the 1960s, May Day took on a new meaning as a symbol of student and worker protests against the government. In May 1968, massive demonstrations broke out across France, leading to a general strike and a near-revolutionary situation. One of the earliest advocates for disability rights in France was Victor Schœlcher, a French abolitionist and politician. In the mid-19th century, he fought for the rights of people with disabilities and succeeded in passing laws that provided for their care and education. The roots of disability justice are deeply intertwined with labor unions and workers' rights. In 1898, a workplace injury law was put into place that required companies to carry insurance to compensate a worker if they were injured on the job. Before this, if you were maimed in the factory and could no longer work, you would likely become destitute. So in 1945, the creation of Social Security, la Sécu, which is extended to every single French person and most visa holders, helped ensure that all employees are insured against the consequences of illnesses and accidents, not related to work, but depriving them of their earning capacity. One of the most influential advocates for disability rights in France was a politician by the name of Simone Veil, a Holocaust survivor who championed the rights of people with disabilities throughout her career. In 1975, as Minister of Health, she led the effort to pass the French law on disability rights, which was a landmark achievement in the struggle for disability rights in France. A dozen years later, a law was put into place that requires all businesses with more than 20 employees to have at least 6% of their employees have some sort of disability. 2018 and 2020 saw reforms of the original law from 1987. Now, all companies, no matter their size, must meet that 6% minimum. And more notably, this applies to all levels of a company, workers, managers, and C-suite alike. The reason they require 6% is that is the approximate percentage of disabled people in France between the ages of 15 and 64. Now, obviously, there's a lot of history I've been obligated to skip over here. Let me know in the comments if you'd like a video specifically on the history of disability rights in France. Today, May Day remains an important day for workers' rights and social justice in France. The demonstrations continue to draw large crowds, and the issues they address have evolved with the times. This year, the ongoing protests over pension reform have been heated. People are understandably upset. There are plans for major protests this May Day, with hopes to eclipse the prior marches. There has even been agitation for a regime change and the institution of a sixth republic. 49.3 times 49.3 equals 1789. That was the year of the French Revolution. It's like saying 1776 to an American. The folks chatting about this aren't just on the fringe either. I have multiple friends who think we could be barreling towards a new republic. They say that Macron has hugely underestimated how angry people are and how tight their wallets have become with ballooning inflation and the rising energy costs. His heavy-handed response to protests has not gone over well either. Some things are just part of the international language, I suppose. His call for 100 days of appeasement and unity leading up to the 14 Juillet have been met with 100 days of anger instead. Now, one of the major unions, CGT, has threatened to cut electrical power during major events in May, like at the Cannes Film Festival, the Monaco Grand Prix, or the French Open. There have also been calls for Robin Hood-style actions, such as giving free electricity to hospitals or low-income households. As you can imagine, things are very much in flux here in France right now. So, that's it for today's episode of Hexed History. I hope you've enjoyed learning about the history of May Day in France. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and strike the bell if you'd like to know when we post new videos. À bientôt, mes amis!